Hi everyone, I'm going to do a tier list today, and I'm doing a tier list because I've had a lot of people asking me what things they should be doing to get a good job in IT. Now first let's start with what is IT. So I'm talking basically tech jobs. Now this could be something like software development or something a little less technical like a project manager. Now I'm a bit more on the technical side, so this will probably apply a little bit more to technical type things. Now, what do I mean by a good job? Well, I'm talking about a job that has a decent salary, 401k, kind of what you consider to be a quote-unquote real job. I'm not really talking about the lower level IT jobs, which I actually will cover in the tier list. So let's go ahead and go to the first thing, and that would be a degree. Now, a degree is really important for a lot of tech jobs, but there are some times where you can get into one of these salaried jobs and not have a degree, and we're going to go over that. But a degree is something that a lot of people are looking for, and some organizations actually will just flat out require a degree no matter what. They will not consider you if you don't have one. So degrees are one of the more traditional routes people go to get into something like this. But alone, they're not really a silver bullet. However, they're still very good to have, and that puts them in the A tier. Okay, so next are certifications. Now, certifications are everywhere in IT, and pretty much every field in IT has it. There are certifications for project management, there are certifications for networking, and yes, there are certifications for software development. Now, these different fields, the certification has kind of a different meaning. So for networking, certifications are a pretty big deal, where in software development, it's not quite as true. So this will depend on which specific field that you're going into as to how this compares to the other options on this list. But they are generally respected, and companies do look at them when you go to apply. So a certification basically is a test that you take, and it's a structured test, and generally there are classes that are offered in one form or another where you can study for this test and you can take it and you can prove that you know that knowledge, at least you did at that time. So there are downsides to certifications, like some of them require renewal, meaning that you may have to go and retest every once in a while. Now, if you're just trying to get your first job with it, this might not be a huge deal. The other thing, though, to consider is there are actually some areas in some companies and organizations that might require a certification. So if you don't already have one, you might be asked to go get one. And if you already have it, that's going to give you kind of a +1 on the hiring list of people that are being interviewed. So certifications are really great, but they generally don't get you the job on their own. Pretty much hardly ever. If all you have is a certification in something and nothing else, there's almost no chance that you're going to get that job. But they make excellent accessories to your resume. Having a certification, especially very closely or directly related to what you're doing, makes your resume look better than the person next to you. So for that, they go to the B tier. So next is fancy resumes. And what I mean by that is these days you can use things to make your resume look really, really fancy, like a very high production value. Now, this is something that you may want to consider doing it because its level of effort isn't as high as a lot of these other things. However, a fancy resume alone is nowhere close to getting you a job. So for that, it goes into the D tier. Okay, so next is the king of them all, and that is experience in the field. Now, this is not always easily achievable, and I do recognize that. But if you have experience, and the more the better, in specifically what the job is looking for, that is better than anything else on this list. And there are going to be things that are sort of adjacent, and the further away you go in adjacency, the less this gets. So this can slip to A to B, depending on just how related this is. So I'll give you an example. If I have done a lot of software development and a lot of stuff on the command line around that, and I am going to then take that and go to be a server admin, I may have slipped a little bit, but it's still a really good thing to have. Now, if I have worked at any level as a network administrator, and I'm going for a job that is network administrator, that is the king. And I'm talking internships here. So if you've gotten an internship where you do a specific thing and then you want to take that to a company for a real salary job to do that real specific thing, you can't get any better than real experience. I'll give you an example. So I work for a company called ServiceNow that runs a development platform. I was able to take that and get a job as a ServiceNow developer. That is about as bullseye as you can get, because I actually worked for the company that makes the development platform. So even though I only had around a year of experience doing that as an intern, and I didn't get paid a salaried income, I think I actually did have a 401k, but it was an internship basically. This was not the salaried job that we're talking about. So I guess basically what I'm saying is, even if you're doing it at a lower level for not as much pay, if you are hitting the bullseye in the subject area, then you are definitely in S tier with that. There's nothing better than experience, and for that, experience in the field goes to the S tier. So the next one is personal projects, and this is one I'm a huge fan of personally. So a personal project is basically when you take something that you want to do and you just do it on your own. You use what you have at your disposal to make something, and the skills that you use fall within these skill sets that these companies might want for these IT jobs. Now, for example, I did a personal project which was a web server where you could sign up and post comments and things like that. So that actually involved several skills that I could use towards different types of jobs. So one was programming, obviously, like web type programming. Another was databases. Another was networking, because all of those things were needed to actually make this project a reality. Now, this can help you in one of two ways. One, you can use this to apply for different types of jobs if you're not really exactly sure the route you want to go yet. Another good thing is that it shows these companies that you are well-rounded, and even if the job description doesn't have some of these things in it, they will like the fact that you're familiar with them and could do them if needed. Beyond that, it gives companies an excellent alternative to the technical interview test type thing, where they see if you have the skills you have by trying to make you do it on the fly, sometimes without the ability to Google things, sometimes without even a computer. So this is much better to companies and much better for you, because it more closely resembles the real life experience at work, where you have the resources that you will have and you're not being quickly timed. The only reason the technical interview is like that is because they don't have weeks or months to interview you, and that wouldn't work for you either. You don't have that long to not have a job, basically. So they have to do what they can do. With the personal project, they can actually just ask you about your personal project. With things like GitHub, you can show them your personal project. And there will be experts there, people that work in the field, that will know if you are trying to BS them. If you're trying to just make stuff up, they're going to know that you're just making it up, and they're going to ask you questions to that, which will not be a problem if you really did this in your personal project. So personal projects are really great, and they're sort of like certifications, where a personal project alone and nothing else really is not likely to get you the job, although yes, there could be some exceptions, but for that, I put them in the B tier. So this was the hardest one for me to rank, and I feel a little bit bad for where I put it. I put it there because of what most people's experience with it is, but that's experience out of the field. Now, what you have to realize is almost any job you do will have some things that in some way relate to the field. So you have to do another gauge with it, like you did with the in-field stuff, and that's how close to the field is it. Like, customer service at McDonald's might not seem like much in IT, basically working the register. But if you're going to go into something like a cloud support technician, that actually could count for something and could be closer to the in the field than you would actually think. You have to make that deduction for yourself, and it can be hard. But here's the deal. Having experience in a lower level job that isn't really related, it is helpful in some ways, but it's not as helpful as you would think. Now, there's one huge exception to this, and that's if you have no work experience whatsoever and you don't have a few other things that we're going to go over, this complete absence could really hurt you when you go for a job. Companies a lot of times don't generally like the idea of hiring someone into a salary position for their first ever job ever. Now, there are other things that can fill this role other than, a minimum wage job. But we're going to go into those later, and again, a deduction you have to make for yourself. This is what makes this hard to rank. But the truth is, having 10 years working fry chef at McDonald's is not really going to help you get a development job, aside from the fact that you had a job and you showed up for 10 years. Now, that is meaningful. It's actually very meaningful to companies. They really don't want to hire someone who could just flake out and just not show up for work on time and not be able to get things done. That's something that they do worry about. But having a year or so in it, that's enough to kind of prove it. Having a lot of it, it's not helping you anymore at all. which really pulls this down in what I gave it in the tier ranking. And that's a D. I give this a D in the tier list. So the next one was another really hard one to rank, and that's a personal connection, because this can vary so much. Now, if you know the CEO of Exxon and you are his best friend and you hang out every day and you have since high school, then you probably have an S tier type thing here, whether or not you get anything else on the list. Now, if you know Joe, who is a software developer at Microsoft, that's not nearly as big as you might think it is. Whether or not Joe thinks he can get you a job at Microsoft, he may not be able to. Generally, as someone that works in the field, I can recommend someone's resume, but that's about all I can do. And does that give you a slight boost for this one job at this one company? Yes. Let's say we're just not hiring anybody in that department. Well, then that's not going to help you. And it gets even worse if you are trying to do something in a different field. Let's say you know somebody who's well, HR might not be a good example because they actually make some of these decisions, but let's say it's in accounting and they think they can get you a job as a software developer. Well, chances are they may not be able to. They won't really have any pull in that area or even know if there are open jobs. Now, it can give you a little bit of a boost, of course, and it's going to be different organization from organization. A big organization, it's not going to help as much. I have recommended people for specific jobs in a different department, and it just never came to anything. And there are a lot of different reasons behind that. One of the worst parts about this is you're sort of staking things on a singular company and a singular role, and that might not work out, in which case the whole thing was bunk. Now, if you have a friend who's doing that, I'm not saying don't take advantage of this. You should, but don't be surprised if that doesn't work out. Do not have it as your only option. So for that reason, this goes in the C tier. So the next one is a tailored resume. And what this means is that you look at the specific jobs that you're going for and you tailor your resume to only show the things that are pertinent to that job. Now, this is something that you should do, and I will say that. However, on its own, it's not really any good. If you don't have any skills to tailor towards what you're trying to do, it's pretty much useless. But if you're not doing this, I would recommend it, although there is kind of a cost-benefit analysis to be put into this because it takes time to tailor a resume, and there are a lot of jobs out there. So it will take you more time basically to apply to the same jobs, where you could have a very generalized resume that shows all your skills and you can put it out much faster. But I would recommend tailoring your resume, especially if you're looking at a job that you really do think fits your skill set, and that would go into basically removing the bigger things from fields that aren't matching and replacing them with smaller things in the things that are. So because of this, the tailored resume gets a C on the list. Okay, so the next one is a social media presence. And this is sort of a double-edged sword in a way, and I'm going to talk about this. But in general, your social media presence has a little bit more potential to hurt you than it does to help you. And that's because a lot of companies are going to want to look at what you've done on social media. Now, not all do this, but if you've got a huge presence and you're known and you said one thing that they don't like or is controversial in any way, that might just disqualify you completely. So social media and how popular you are online is not going to do anything for you unless you have something that is somehow specifically tailored towards what you're doing. Like if you have a either a YouTube channel or some kind of Twitter account or something that is all about helping people with the type of thing that you want to do, yes, that's something that you could list. But I'm talking about general social media. Companies don't really care how many likes you got on your posts when it comes to IT jobs. It's just not that much of an important thing. And it can hurt you if there's something in there that they don't like or might make you look like sort of a risk. Because if you go on your social media account and say something, they might actually see that as you representing them. And that would not look good to them, and they just kind of don't want to take the risk. Now, there is a weird other side to this, where if you just have no social media presence at all, if you have no accounts whatsoever, and you go to a company that wants to be able to look at those, and you just say you don't have any, somehow that can actually hurt you because it's like they want to know more about you and you haven't given them any avenue to getting it. But I think those situations are kind of uncommon. So because of what social media is, how little it has to do with the job, it goes in the F tier. Okay, so the next one is being really well dressed for an interview. Now, obviously, this isn't going to score too highly because you have to get to the interview before it can help you at all. But there are some people that have the idea that getting a really snazzy suit that's been tailored to you, spending 3-4 grand on that, is going to somehow just land you the job because you look like such a winner. In tech, that's not generally the case. And again, if it's closer to managerial, then it could be more helpful than what I'm going to rank it. But you should dress well. That's one thing. You don't want to come in wearing beat up jeans and a t-shirt. But when you go for tech companies, you generally want to look at the company and look at how people dress there and do like one level higher than that, because you want to be closer to over than under, basically. Better being over than under. But being able to dress super snazzy is definitely not going to land you a job, no matter how good you think you look in that suit. So for that, it goes to the E tier. So the next one is career fairs. Now, career fairs are generally these big open events where you can go and you can talk to people from different companies in different fields. Now, in the IT field, there's going to be people there and you can talk to them and do sort of like a quick mock interview. Now, the problem with the career fair is there's a lot of people there, and it's almost better served as a job interview preparation than it is an actual way to get a job. That being said, I do know people who have gotten jobs from career fairs. It is not impossible. So they're definitely worth attending. That's the good thing about them, is they're not a very large investment of your time, and you'll get a little bit of a taste of what people are looking for if you don't already have it. That being said, if you're staking your future career on a career fair and nothing else, you will have absolutely no hope. And so for that, career fairs go into the C tier. Okay, so the next one is people skills. Now, I couldn't do a video without including this. This basically just means your ability to work well with people. Now, a lot of us tend to think of these as being secondary in technical jobs, more technical roles like software developer. The truth is they're really not. And when you're being interviewed, they're not only trying to see if you are able to do the job, they're trying to see, is this someone I want to work with? Is this someone I want to see every day? So having good people skills can get you a long way in interviews. It can actually get you a long way in other places too. If you have good people skills, you'll have an easier time finding opportunities. However, people skills on their own are probably not going to get you any kind of IT job. It's just a really good addition to have with the skills and other things that you're bringing to the table. So for that, it goes into the C tier. Okay, so next I'm talking about extracurricular activities, and this is one that you should do if you can. This can be a decent stand-in for an unrelated, out of the field job. So basically, this includes sports, it includes things like dancing, or anything that you would consider an extracurricular in high school or college. Now, there are specific situations where this could really help you, like if you played basketball in high school or college and it turns out the person interviewing you is a huge fan of that sport. But in general, it's not going to help you that much, but it is good to show that you're a well-rounded person and that you can commit to something. Again, though, alone, it's definitely not going to get you a job. So for that, it goes in the E tier. So next is going to be organizations and clubs that relate to the field you're going for. And in IT, what I'm mostly talking about is programming team, hackathon, hacking team, things like that. So not every area in IT really has something like this, but there are several that do, and I did want to cover them. So the one downside to these guys is that there are a lot of people that will do them, but just kind of show up to a meeting once a week and never really contribute. And because of that, it sort of dilutes it on resumes, that people will see a lot of resumes with hacking team on it and nothing else. So if you really did participate in these things, on your resume, try to say what you did. Now, because these are in the field, they can be very helpful and can be a decent stand-in for either a personal project or a certificate. So this is another great addition to your resume, especially if it is directly associated, say, hackathon, or if you're in a cybersecurity group. Going into cybersecurity with something like that is really awesome, especially if you can list specifically what you did and not just put it on your resume. So a great stand-in for either certificates or a personal project, if you can have 2 of those 3 or 3 of those 3, that's even better. Because of that, it goes in the B tier. So the next one is kind of vague, but it's skills. And this is basically to say that you have the skills you need for the job that you're applying for. So of course, this is obviously important, but without anything else around it, like a personal project or a degree, it can be really hard to prove that you have these skills. A lot of companies won't give you the interview in the first place, let alone let you get to the technical part, if you just have nothing to prove it. Because all they can really do is just test you. However, not having the skills, even if you do have, say, a degree, is going to make it really hard for you to get that job. Even if you have the S-tier experience in the field, it can still be challenging if you somehow don't have the skills. Now, I will say that doesn't happen that often. Generally, if you've worked in that exact thing, you will have the skills. So just having the specific skills that you need can be extremely helpful. It's just that there are a lot of things that if you don't have a degree, you can't get, and they just won't give you an interview if you can't kind of prove it in some way on your resume. But I've given you a lot of ways that you can prove that. For people that are trying to go for these types of jobs and they don't want to do the degree route, having the skills, really having them, and having some of these other things might work in some places, in many places actually. And there are a lot of companies that are actually trying to look for people who do have the skills and don't really care if you have the degree. So for this, skills go in the A tier. So this last one I kind of threw in as a joke. That's a criminal record. Because a criminal record will do nothing but hurt you when it comes to getting a job, and there's almost no exceptions to that rule. Basically, when companies go to hire you, they're going to do a background check on you, and they may find things in your criminal history. Now, before I scare you, I want to let you know I do not have a perfect, sparkly, clean record. It will not always stop you from getting a job. In fact, I did very well despite it. Now, the main thing is if you have something like this, it's best if it's not a high-level crime, like a misdemeanor. It's probably not that big of a deal, especially if it happened a long time ago. So the severity of the crime is considered, and the length of time that it's been, because companies do realize that people change. So I don't want to dissuade anyone from trying to do what they want to do because they have a criminal record. However, if you are looking to get a job like this with a salary and a 401k, whatever you do, do not add to your criminal record. Basically, you need to make it your #1 goal to get this job, and the criminal record will go directly against that. So for that, the criminal record, well, it doesn't go in a tier. I'm just gonna throw it in the trash. Alright guys, I hope that you liked this video. I had a lot of fun making it, and if you did like it, please give me a like. It really helps me out. I love doing stuff like this, and this was one of the more fun ones. Now, I do want to mention that this is just my opinion, and honestly, what was harder than coming up with the different things that you can do, these are things I've seen, was actually figuring out how to put them in a tier ranking. I think the one I feel the worst about is putting the unrelated job experience in D. There are so many situations where that can go so much higher, and that's why it's sort of a spectrum. Now, I do want to mention that when you're looking for a job to do as you pursue, your eventual goal of getting a salaried job like this, that try to get it as close to the in the field as you can, because there's a lot of jobs that don't meet the criteria for this video. Basically, they are not jobs that are salaried, that pay well, that have like a 401k and stuff, but they're really excellent for getting that, in field experience, and they would really be closer to counted as in-field jobs. So I mentioned internships as the in-field experience, but there's a lot of other things that fall into that. I know a lot of people that worked at companies that do web hosting where they did kind of either network admin or server admin stuff. It was all low level, but that's really a lot closer to the in-field experience than, say, working at McDonald's would have been. And they didn't really make a ton doing it. It wasn't called an internship, but it still really counts. So look for opportunities like that. There are companies out there, especially around universities, that will give you something like that. Okay guys, so I hope you liked this video. Again, if you did, please give me a thumbs up, smash that like button. It shows me that you like this stuff, and it tells me that you want to see more content like this. I've got a lot more to say, and I'm always happy to help. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. Have a good night.